Mommy, wake up. Please wake up. I felt a small hand gently shaking me. Blinking my eyes open, I saw my daughter's face hovering over mine, worry written all over her expression. What is it, Sarah? I asked, sitting up and rubbing the sleep from my eyes. With an urgency in her voice that startled me, she whispered, Mommy. I don't think you should stay with Daddy anymore. Her words pulled me completely awake. I stared at her, stunned. What are you talking about? I asked carefully, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Sarah looked down, hesitant, and then slowly explained that she thought things would be better if her father and I separated. At first, I was shocked. How could a 5-year-old come to such a conclusion? But as she talked, I listened. And sadly, I realized she wasn't entirely wrong. Let me introduce myself. My name is Emma Simpson. I'm 34, a working mother doing my best to balance the chaos of modern life. I've been in the insurance business for over a decade now, working for a large company. My role is demanding, and I have strict hours from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every weekday. On top of that, I handle school drop-offs and pickups for Sarah. It's not easy juggling everything, but I've managed, not because I want recognition, but because I have to. I can't afford to fall behind. Promotions, job security, a future for Sarah, these things come at a cost. And I've been paying it with everything I've got. Sarah is 5 years old and far too perceptive for her age. Bright, observant, and always asking thoughtful questions. Sometimes I forget she's still so young. My husband and I always dreamed of providing her with every opportunity, lessons, travel, exposure to everything we never had. But dreams need money. That's the reality. And so, I push myself hard at work, constantly thinking ahead, preparing for unexpected expenses. Some people ask me why I push myself so much. After all, isn't my husband employed too? Yes, he has a job, but it's not steady. The company he works for has been struggling. As a result, his income has taken a serious hit. These days, he earns barely a third of what I bring home. It's difficult to depend on him financially. And lately, I've noticed another concerning pattern. Just a few nights ago, after Sarah had gone to sleep, Keith, my husband, approached me looking nervous. Emma, could I borrow some money? He asked hesitantly. I looked up from my laptop. For what? I haven't received my paycheck this month yet, he said. There were a few drinking meetups and other stuff. I've run short. You used your whole salary already? I asked, genuinely surprised. He scratched the back of his neck and gave me a sheepish look. I didn't plan it. I just couldn't say no. This wasn't new. Lately, Keith always seemed to have a reason for not contributing to our household finances. More often than not, he'd either hand me less than what was needed or skip giving me anything at all, citing parties, helping his parents, or some other vague excuse. I'd stopped confronting him about it. What was the point? He just leaned more on me financially. And if I refused, what then? He had nothing saved. I knew that much. He had told me himself, his bank balance hovered near zero. If I didn't help him, he might resort to borrowing from others or falling into debt. But I couldn't let Sarah grow up seeing her father as someone who couldn't manage money. So, most of the time, I just gave in. How about $200? I sighed. His face lit up. You're a lifesaver, Emma. I promise I'll return every penny next month. You always say that, I replied quietly, the weight of repeated disappointments pressing down on me. But you never do you? I know, and I'm sorry, he said quickly. But this time it's different. I'm done with the drinking parties. I'll change. I swear. You need to think about what's important, I said, my tone firm. Sarah comes first. I know. You're right, Keith nodded, looking remorseful, or at least trying to. I couldn't shake the feeling that Keith didn't grasp how serious things had become. Doubting him made me feel guilty, but the signs were getting harder to ignore. A heavy sigh escaped my lips as my thoughts spiraled. I had always stood by Keith, not just because he was my husband, but because he truly was a devoted father. He adored Sarah and made an effort to spend meaningful time with her on weekends. One morning, he said, "Emma, why don't you take a break today? I'll look after Sarah." "I've got a long to-do list," I responded hesitantly. "It's fine," he insisted. "We'll order lunch, and I'll clean up as much as I can. Just take some time for yourself." "Really?" I asked, glancing at Sarah, who was still yawning and rubbing her eyes. "Think you can hang out with Daddy today?" I asked her gently. She nodded and wrapped her little arms around me. "That's okay, Mommy." I smiled, a little relieved. "All right then, maybe I'll go out for a bit, do some shopping." "Yay! But bring me something too," she said with a playful grin. "I'll bring your favorite bread," I promised. "Yay! Thanks, Mommy," she cheered, her eyes lighting up. Sarah, even at 5, was well behaved beyond her years. Of course, I wouldn't dream of leaving her alone. Still, a sliver of unease made me tuck a note with my phone number into her bag, just in case. I told her gently, "Call me if anything happens, all right? Everything's going to be just fine." That day was the first time in ages I went out by myself. I wandered the mall aimlessly, browsing the aisles without really looking for anything in particular. Nothing caught my interest, nothing for me at least. So instead, I bought a few cute outfits for Sarah and picked up her favorite chocolate croissant from the bakery. "I'm back," I called as I stepped through the door. Sarah ran to me with a wide smile. "Mommy, welcome home. Did you have fun shopping?" "I did," I said, handing her the bag. "Look what I brought you." Her eyes lit up. "A chocolate croissant and new clothes too. Can we eat the croissant tomorrow for breakfast?" "Of course," I replied, taking off my shoes. "Where's Daddy?" "He's out on the balcony. He's been talking on the phone for a while," she answered. That made me pause. "On the phone?" I walked toward the balcony and peered through the glass. Sure enough, Keith was outside, smoking and chatting animatedly. When he noticed me watching, he jumped a little, quickly ended the call, and turned toward me. "You're back already," he said with a nervous smile. "Yeah. Who were you talking to?" I asked. "Work stuff," he answered nonchalantly. "You left Sarah alone inside," I said, trying to stay calm but feeling the tension rising. "It was just for a moment." "Sorry, Sarah," he said, avoiding eye contact. Sarah frowned and looked up at me. "Mommy, did you know? Daddy said we were going to play, but he was on the phone most of the time." "Really?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. She nodded. "He promised we'd read a story together." I glanced at Keith. He looked genuinely remorseful this time. That evening, we had dinner like usual. I helped Sarah with her bath and stayed a little longer by her side at bedtime, wanting to make up for the time she spent alone. Later that night, when Sarah was fast asleep, I sat down with Keith. "Keith, are you really that overwhelmed at work?" I asked seriously. "You're constantly on the phone, even on weekends." "Things have been hectic," he said. "Lots of overtime. I've been staying late because of deadlines, not parties." "Fine. But if you're going to be busy, at least give me a heads up. Sarah needs your attention too. She's your daughter. She deserves more than half-hearted promises." "I understand," he replied, nodding. "You're right. Next time you go out, I'll make sure to either focus on Sarah or let you know in advance." "Good," I said quietly. "I'm heading to bed," Keith muttered a few minutes later, disappearing into the bedroom with his phone in hand. For the past 6 months, Sarah and I had gotten used to sharing a bed. Keith slept alone most nights. Though I loved the closeness with my daughter, I couldn't ignore how far apart Keith and I had grown. He never complained, but deep inside, I felt a growing loneliness. Then one night, everything changed. "Mommy, wake up," Sarah's small voice whispered urgently. I opened my eyes to darkness. It was 2 a.m. The house was silent. Keith was in the other room. "What is it, sweetheart?" I asked groggily. "I have something to ask," she said, her face serious. "A request?" "What kind of request?" "I want you to leave Daddy," she said softly. My body tensed, my sleepiness vanishing instantly. "What did you just say?" "I want you to break up with Daddy." Her words echoed in my head. I looked into her eyes, stunned. "Why would you say something like that?" She hesitated, then said, "Because if you stay with him, you'll be in danger." "Danger? What do you mean?" "I'm fine." "No, you're not. Daddy wants to hurt you." My heart pounded. "Why do you think that, Sarah?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. I gently stroked her back, trying to calm her. Then she said, "Earlier, I got up to use the bathroom, and I heard Daddy on the phone." "What did he say?" "He said, it would be better if something bad happened to you, Mommy. So he could get money. Insurance money." My breath caught in my throat. Insurance money. I didn't want to believe it, but something deep inside told me she was telling the truth. "He also said I love you, but not to you. He said it to someone else." I hugged her tightly, feeling my eyes burn with tears. "It's okay, baby. I'll take care of it." Sarah, so young, yet already sensing the danger I had tried to ignore. Children are more aware than we give them credit for. And my daughter, my brave, observant little girl, was trying to protect me. Gratitude and heartbreak surged through me. Gratitude for Sarah's courage, and heartbreak for the truth I couldn't deny any longer. It was time to face reality. No more excuses. No more hoping things would magically get better. Keith had crossed a line, one we might never come back from. I looked at Sarah, gently brushing her hair away from her face. And then I began to speak, slowly, carefully, knowing what had to come next. "Sarah, there's something really important I need to talk to you about," I said softly, kneeling in front of her. She looked up at me, serious beyond her years. "I'm listening, Mommy. And if what you said earlier is true, then that means you can't stay with Daddy anymore, right?" I nodded slowly. "That's right. I've been thinking about leaving." "What do you think?" She paused, her small brows furrowing in thought. Then, with firm resolve in her voice, she said, "I want to stay with you, Mommy." "You're sure about that?" I asked gently. She nodded again. "I'm sure. I don't want to be without you." Tears welled in my eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart. Then let's get ready to go." We moved quickly but quietly. I told Sarah to pack her essentials without making noise. She carefully filled her backpack, tiptoeing through the room, showing a level of maturity that stunned me. Watching her, I felt a strange mix of sadness and pride. My little girl was growing up too fast. As I gathered my own belongings, I slipped off my wedding ring and placed it silently on the living room table, a quiet symbol of goodbye. We stepped out together into the dark, early morning hours, heading straight to my parents' house. The sky was still dim when we rang the doorbell at 5 a.m. My mother, still in her nightgown, answered with a sleepy expression. "Emma? And Sarah too? What's going on, sweetheart?" "I'm sorry for coming so early," I said. "Can we stay here for a bit?" She stepped aside quickly. "Of course. But what happened?" "There's something I need to tell you," I said quietly. Once inside, she helped Sarah get settled in a spare room. My daughter was worn out, and before long, she had drifted off to sleep. My mother handed me a warm cup of tea as I sat down in the living room. I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the warmth calm me, then took a breath and began. I think Keith is planning something terrible, possibly to harm me and make it look like an accident. My words hung heavy in the air. My parents stared at me, stunned. My father finally broke the silence. What do you mean? Why would he do something like that? Sarah overheard him on the phone. He told someone else he loved her. I think he's cheating. And worse, he mentioned something about it being better if something happened to me. Something that would result in insurance money. My father's expression darkened. An affair? And you believe he wants to? I brought his tablet, I said, pulling it from my bag. He probably didn't use his phone for this stuff, but I think he used this. To my surprise, it wasn't locked. I tapped through it, nerves on edge. When I opened the email app, my worst fears came true. Message after message between Keith and a woman I didn't know, full of flirtation, plans, and worst of all, discussions that hinted at something sinister. My mother leaned in, pointing to one message. Emma, this one. This looks like an outline for staging an accident involving you. I quickly took photos of the emails and forwarded them to my lawyer. I also printed copies for documentation. Then, my phone buzzed. It was Keith. Without hesitation, I answered and switched to speakerphone. Hey, Emma? Where are you? I woke up and the house was empty, he said, sounding concerned. That's all you have to say? I replied, barely able to contain my trembling voice. What do you mean, he asked, trying to sound confused. I mean, how dare you act like you're worried? Were you planning to harm me? To fake an accident for insurance money? There was a pause. What? No, what are you talking about? His voice cracked slightly, he was thrown off. You've been talking to someone behind my back, haven't you? Planning something? Sarah heard everything. Sarah, now awake and standing in the doorway, added, You said you loved someone else on the phone, and that if Mommy disappeared, you'd get money. That's not true. Keith shouted through the phone, his voice defensive and unsteady. Stop pretending, I snapped. I've seen your emails. I know everything, the affair, the plan, all of it. There was silence. You really went this far, I continued, my voice sharp. Trying to eliminate me and get paid for it. I never imagined you'd stoop so low. His voice faltered. Emma. I don't want your excuses, I cut him off. Go live with your mistress if that's the life you want. But know this, I will never forgive you. And from now on, Sarah and I will be just fine without you. And with that, I ended the call. I noticed Sarah watching me with wide eyes. She had clearly woken up during the call. Mommy, are you okay? She asked quietly. I'm sorry I woke you, I said, walking over to her. She shook her head. No, it's okay. What happened with Daddy? It's over now, I said, hugging her tightly. You don't have to worry anymore. We're safe. Really? You promise we'll always be together? I smiled through the sting in my eyes. Always. Not long after, I filed for divorce. With my lawyer's help, I secured substantial child support. Though I could have pressed charges for what Keith had done, or planned to do, I chose not to pursue legal punishment, for Sarah's sake. I wanted peace, not more pain. I cut all contact with Keith and let my lawyer handle the rest. Eventually, I learned that both his mistress and even his own parents had abandoned him. He was left dealing with mounting debts and struggling to meet his obligations, including the child support payments. Meanwhile, Sarah and I moved into a new home, starting over with a fresh chapter. She adapted quickly to her new preschool and seemed genuinely happy. Our days were filled with laughter again. There would be more hurdles ahead, I knew that. But with Sarah by my side, I felt ready to face anything. She wasn't just my daughter. She was my partner, my strength, my reason to move forward. And together, we would build a future no one could take from us.